January 14, 1941. Dunkirk, northern France. A lone British artillery gunner crouched behind his 25-pounder, eyes fixed on the distant pockmarked road where the rumble of German armored vehicles grew louder. Every second stretched, each one heavier than the last, as the Luftwaffe's engines roared overhead. British infantry held their shaky lines, rifles trembling in unison with the gun's recoil, waiting for the inevitable assault. From the misted distance, a Panzer IV crept forward, its tracks chewing through the frozen mud. The German platoon had underestimated the British artillery's position. The gunner adjusted his aim, heart hammering, fingers trembling on the trigger. A single, precise shot tore through the stillness. Metal screamed, armor splintered, and the German advance stalled. Around him, soldiers froze, disbelief and relief merging in the frigid air. That one moment, one shot, shifted the battlefield in an instant, unseen by most, yet decisive for the British defense. By early 1941, Britain faced a precarious war. The fall of France in June 1940 had left the British Expeditionary Force evacuated from Dunkirk, but the continent remained a stage dominated by German might. Across the Channel, Hitler's Wehrmacht solidified control over Western Europe, their armored divisions pushing deep into occupied territories with precision and speed. The British Isles braced for the possibility of invasion, while small garrisons and artillery units maintained positions in France, holding strategic ports and supply lines to delay the enemy. Dunkirk, once a quiet coastal town, had become a critical node. Its shallow beaches and rail networks were vital for the movement of British forces and material. Artillery units were scattered along its perimeter, often manned by hastily assembled crews, many of whom were still adjusting to the harsh realities of frontline engagement. Every gunner knew the stakes. A single German breakthrough could unravel weeks of defensive planning. The German strategy relied on combined arms. Panzer divisions, supported by Stuka dive bombers, advanced rapidly, exploiting gaps and weaknesses. Reconnaissance teams probed defenses, while infantry followed the armored spearheads to consolidate gains. Each attack forced British commanders to weigh risk against limited resources, balancing the need to hold ground with the imperative of preserving manpower. For Britain, artillery was both shield and sword. 25-pounder field guns had become indispensable, their versatility allowing them to deliver direct fire against advancing tanks or suppress enemy positions at range. The gun crews, often undertrained but disciplined, operated with a singular purpose: delay the German momentum, protect the infantry, and buy time for reinforcements. Local intelligence, though imperfect, informed deployment. Scouts and observers tracked panzer movements, reporting every sighting. The British command understood that predicting the enemy's timing could mean the difference between holding a line and catastrophic collapse. Each decision carried weight. Artillery positions had to be chosen with care, balancing concealment with effective fields of fire. By mid-January, tensions along Dunkirk's perimeter were high. Units rotated through trenches, with gunners working in teams, alternating between observation, loading, and firing. The cold made operations physically taxing, but the psychological strain was greater. British soldiers were acutely aware of the enemy's reputation for precision and ruthlessness. The German army's successes in Poland, France, and the Low Countries cast a long shadow over even the most determined defenders. Yet Britain's resolve remained firm. Officers emphasized discipline and coordination, ensuring that every gun, every man, every decision contributed to a unified defensive effort. Morale, fragile though it could be, was bolstered by the knowledge that each moment of resistance was part of a broader strategy, a strategy that relied on courage, calculation, and the occasional decisive shot. Amidst this precarious balance, a single gunner prepared his artillery piece, unaware that the seconds ahead would crystallize into a moment of singular importance. Every motion, the aligning of the sight, the adjusting of the elevation, the careful loading of the shell, was precise, conditioned by training and necessity. Beyond him, German armor crept forward, unaware of the barrier waiting for them, a hidden force that would shape the course of the engagement. The British defensive strategy at Dunkirk had evolved from necessity. With the rapid German advance through northern France, static lines were insufficient. Instead, a network of artillery positions, observation posts, and infantry strongpoints formed a layered defense. British commanders emphasized flexibility. Units could reposition quickly, cover one another, and exploit natural terrain to channel enemy armor into kill zones. Every hillock, every ruined building became an opportunity to slow the Wehrmacht. 25-pounder field guns were the backbone of this strategy. Designed for both indirect and direct fire, they allowed gunners to engage targets at distance or defend against immediate threats. Crews learned to anticipate panzer movements, calculating trajectories in seconds, adjusting for speed, distance, and terrain. The training was rigorous, the discipline exacting. A single miscalculation could expose both the gun and its operators to destruction. On the German side, reconnaissance reported British artillery emplacements, yet overconfidence often left them vulnerable. Panzer units advanced in columns, relying on mechanized speed rather than stealth. Luftwaffe support amplified their threat, with Stuka dive bombers delivering destructive precision ahead of infantry and armor. The Germans assumed that British artillery would hesitate under pressure, but they underestimated the resilience and adaptability of the gun crews. British gunners relied on meticulous preparation. Shells were stacked in ready positions, each numbered and matched to firing orders. Observation teams worked with maps, binoculars, and rudimentary radio equipment to track German movements. Commanders issued pre-planned firing sequences that could be executed in seconds, allowing multiple guns to focus on a single target with lethal efficiency. Infantry coordination was equally vital. Riflemen, machine gunners, and anti-tank detachments were positioned to protect artillery emplacements. The lines were thin, often overstretched, but every soldier understood the stakes. Casualties were inevitable, but the defense depended on holding ground long enough for decisive shots to disrupt the German advance. As January 14th progressed, intelligence indicated an imminent push along the coastal road leading to Dunkirk. German armor, including a mix of Panzer IIIs and IVs, had been sighted converging toward British positions. The gunners readied themselves, adjusting sights and aligning multiple batteries to create overlapping fields of fire. Officers walked the lines, issuing last-minute orders, reinforcing discipline, and ensuring each man understood his role. The approaching enemy was unaware of the trap that had been set. British observers calculated the timing, estimating that the first German tanks would enter range within moments. Every soldier braced, eyes scanning the horizon, ears straining for the low rumble of engines, each heartbeat echoing like the roll of a distant drum. The tension was palpable, a mixture of anticipation and fear. Within this environment, individual initiative mattered as much as strategy. Each gunner's skill, decision-making speed, and calm under pressure could mean the difference between holding the line and a breakthrough. In one emplacement, a young British gunner prepared his 25-pounder, adjusting the elevation by fractions of a degree, double-checking his calculations. The German armor moved methodically, unknowingly advancing toward a point where one precise shot could halt the advance entirely. This convergence of preparation, discipline, and timing set the stage for a moment that would define the engagement. The British defense depended not on numbers or overwhelming firepower but on the intersection of strategy and human precision. The gunners were the final barrier between the enemy and the coastal town, the thin line separating controlled retreat from catastrophic collapse. As the German tanks neared their designated point, the artillery crew braced. Fingers hovered over triggers, eyes tracked the lead vehicle, and in that suspended moment, the outcome of the impending clash hung on a single decision, the moment a British gunner would fire and alter the course of the battle. The men operating the 25-pounder were ordinary soldiers thrust into extraordinary circumstances. Youthful yet disciplined, they had been trained to act decisively under extreme pressure. Each shell loaded was more than metal, it was a lifeline for comrades on the front lines. The gunner's hands, steady despite adrenaline, reflected countless hours of repetitive drills, muscle memory honed to perfection. Fear was constant, but so was determination. The gun crew's cohesion allowed them to function as a single unit. One man adjusted the breech, another called out range corrections, while the loader moved with swift precision. Their individual skill was vital, yet the collective effort amplified their impact. Communication, often nonverbal, kept the gun firing accurately against a fast-approaching armored threat. Psychology played a critical role. Every soldier knew the stakes. A miscalculated shot could spell death for nearby infantry or allow the enemy to break through. This awareness created a tension that sharpened focus. Within the chaos of war, camaraderie provided stability. Encouraging words, shared glances, and practiced routines bound them together, transforming fear into coordinated action. The human element, courage, training, and split-second decision-making, was as decisive as any weapon. Without it, even the most advanced artillery would falter. In that instant, the gunner's split-second choice to fire would reflect the culmination of human resilience and composure under fire, turning individual skill into a moment that would reverberate across the battlefield. British defensive doctrine emphasized delaying actions to disrupt German advances. Dunkirk's artillery positions were strategically placed to exploit narrow roads and choke points. Commanders relied on layered defenses, guns covering infantry positions, overlapping fields of fire, and pre-planned trajectories aimed at stopping armored columns before they could gain momentum. Flexibility was key. Artillery units adjusted rapidly to shifting threats, moving guns or redirecting fire as reconnaissance reports arrived. The British gunners anticipated the enemy's approach, calculating optimal moments to engage. Timing was critical. A premature salvo could alert the enemy, a delayed shot could be catastrophic. Coordination with infantry enhanced effectiveness. Anti-tank rifles, machine guns, and mortars supported the gunners, creating a web of interlocking defense. Communication between units ensured that each shot had maximum impact, while camouflage and deception minimized vulnerability. Tactical awareness extended beyond immediate battlefield needs. The gunners' positions were part of a broader strategy to protect key exits and preserve retreating forces. The objective was not just to inflict casualties but to shape the enemy's movement, channeling them into areas where British firepower could dominate. In this calculated environment, every shell fired was a tool of precision, part of a larger plan designed to delay, disrupt, and ultimately neutralize the German advance. The British 25-pounder field gun was central to halting the German breakthrough. Introduced in the late 1930s, it combined range, versatility, and rate of fire, capable of both indirect bombardment and direct anti-tank engagement. Its design allowed crews to fire high-explosive shells at distant targets or armor-piercing rounds against panzer units advancing along predictable paths. Accuracy was achieved through careful calculation. Observers relayed range and bearing, while the gun crew adjusted elevation and traverse, factoring in terrain and velocity. Each round required meticulous handling. Even minor errors could send the shell wide or, worse, into friendly positions. The gun's mechanical reliability under extreme conditions, mud, frost, or shell shock, made it indispensable. Training emphasized speed and cohesion. Crews drilled endlessly, learning to load, aim, and fire under stress with near-automatic precision. One gun could fire up to 6 rounds per minute in emergencies, enough to stop or severely damage an advancing panzer. British gunners learned to maximize these capabilities, aligning multiple guns for concentrated fire or targeting specific weak points in enemy armor. Supplementary equipment enhanced effectiveness. Spotting scopes, rangefinders, and rudimentary communication systems allowed coordination across multiple batteries. The integration of technology with human skill created a force multiplier. One well-placed shot could halt a tank column and disrupt the enemy's advance entirely. In the tense moments leading to the German push, the 25-pounder was not just a tool, it was the embodiment of British ingenuity, precision, and resilience. Its presence transformed the battlefield from a chaotic rush into a controlled engagement, where a single gunner's expertise could shape the outcome of an entire encounter. British leadership at Dunkirk emphasized initiative and calculated risk. Officers understood that rigid adherence to protocol could be fatal against a mobile enemy. Commanders allowed subordinate leaders, particularly artillery officers, to make split-second decisions when timing was critical. The young gunner, for instance, had authority to fire when conditions were optimal, reflecting a culture that trusted trained judgment over rigid command chains. Leadership extended beyond decision-making. It encompassed preparation, discipline, and morale. Officers ensured that each gun crew understood the strategic purpose of their position, reinforcing the importance of their role in the broader campaign. They drilled crews relentlessly, reviewing firing procedures, communication protocols, and contingency plans. The goal was cohesion under stress, ensuring that every individual acted with precision when confronted with life-or-death moments. Strategic oversight combined with frontline empowerment allowed British forces to respond dynamically to German tactics. Leaders coordinated artillery, infantry, and intelligence, shaping the battlefield in real time. Their foresight and management were crucial in setting conditions where a single, well-aimed shot could halt an armored column, proving that effective leadership was as decisive as weaponry in determining outcomes. German forces at Dunkirk relied on speed, coordination, and the doctrine of blitzkrieg. Panzer divisions advanced in mechanized columns, supported by infantry and Luftwaffe strikes. Reconnaissance identified weaknesses, but overconfidence often masked the risks of exposure to well-positioned artillery. The Germans expected resistance but underestimated British determination and the efficiency of artillery crews. Tanks moved along narrow roads, their flanks vulnerable to coordinated fire. Panzer IVs and IIIs, formidable in open engagement, became liabilities in constrained terrain when facing accurate, direct artillery fire. Their psychological tactics relied on intimidation. Dive bombers, artillery barrages, and rapid armor movements were intended to force British units into disarray. Yet, the gunners' discipline, observation, and pre-planned firing sequences mitigated these effects. The British anticipation of enemy movements effectively countered German aggression, turning calculated pressure into an opportunity to disrupt the attack. Understanding the enemy's mindset and tactics allowed the British to predict the most likely points of penetration. This anticipation enabled the gunner to target precisely, ensuring that one shot could create maximum disruption, breaking the cohesion of the advancing panzers and forcing them into a defensive posture. The moral dimension of this encounter extended beyond strategy and weaponry. Soldiers were not just instruments of war, they were human beings confronting extreme danger, aware that their actions carried life-or-death consequences. The split-second decisions made by gunners were shaped by courage, training, and the understanding that hesitation could result in catastrophe. Resilience was reinforced by purpose. The British forces knew their stand was vital not only for immediate survival but for maintaining a foothold in France, delaying German operations, and preserving hope for wider strategic objectives. Each successful engagement strengthened morale, proving that even in the face of a mechanized onslaught, disciplined action could prevail. The moral impact also extended to the enemy. A single effective artillery strike shattered the assumption of unstoppable German advance. It introduced caution, disrupted momentum, and forced commanders to reconsider tactics. The psychological effect of encountering unexpected, precise resistance revealed that courage, accuracy, and timing could alter battlefield dynamics. For the British soldiers, witnessing the immediate result of the gunner's shot created a sense of validation. Discipline, training, and bravery had tangible impact. The shared experience of confronting overwhelming odds and achieving success reinforced cohesion and confidence. The human spirit, tested in moments of extreme peril, proved decisive alongside tactics and technology, illustrating that morale was both a weapon and a shield in the crucible of war. January 14, 1941, 0932 hours. Dunkirk, northern France. The German advance had slowed unexpectedly. Through the mist and smoke of distant gunfire, the lead Panzer IV crept into range of a concealed British 25-pounder emplacement. The gunner, a corporal in his early 20s, had spent weeks mastering the mechanics of his weapon, yet never had a moment felt as critical as this. The German column, moving along the narrow coastal road, was confident. Reconnaissance suggested minimal resistance ahead. Soldiers inside the tanks chatted casually, unaware that precise calculations and British foresight had created a trap. The artillery crew, fully aware of the stakes, held their breath. Orders were clear: engage only at the optimal moment to maximize effect and minimize exposure. Every second mattered. The gunner adjusted the sight, factoring in distance, elevation, and the slight incline of the frozen ground. Behind him, the loader prepared the shell, hands steady despite tension. Observers reported the speed and spacing of the German tanks, relaying updates through a rudimentary field telephone. Commanders nearby remained calm, trusting the crew to act when timing was exact. 0933 hours. The lead tank's treads were fully exposed. The corporal took aim, aligning the gun with precision honed by countless drills. He squeezed the trigger. The 25-pounder fired, a sudden roar that echoed across the landscape. The shell struck the Panzer IV's side, penetrating its armor. Metal splintered. Smoke and fire erupted. The tank shuddered violently, coming to an abrupt halt. The following vehicles, caught off guard, skidded on the icy road. Drivers braked abruptly, creating a pile-up of armored vehicles. Confusion spread quickly. The German platoon commander attempted to reorganize, but communication lines were jammed by the chaotic halt. Infantry trailing the tanks hesitated, unsure whether to advance into what had become a kill zone. The gunner did not stop. He fired a second shell, targeting the next tank in line. Another explosion, another armored vehicle disabled. Panic rippled through the German column. The British observation team called in coordinates for additional fire, and other batteries adjusted to engage the stalled tanks. What had begun as a single defensive shot became a cascade of coordinated artillery strikes, exploiting the chaos the first hit had created. British infantry moved cautiously forward, exploiting the temporary paralysis of the enemy. Snipers targeted commanders visible through hatches, while machine gun teams swept the road. The German advance, once relentless, was fragmented. Armor and infantry were isolated, their cohesion destroyed by timing, precision, and the decisive action of a single gunner. For the British forces, the moment crystallized the value of training, discipline, and situational awareness. A split-second decision, executed flawlessly, had halted an enemy offensive that could have overwhelmed the perimeter. Around the gunner, the air was charged with adrenaline and disbelief. Fellow soldiers exchanged nods of recognition. They understood instinctively that the battle had turned in their favor. 0938 hours. Commanders on higher ground assessed the situation. Reports confirmed that the lead panzer platoon had suffered critical losses. The stalled German column created an opportunity to consolidate British positions, reorganize defensive lines, and prepare for counter-battery fire if needed. The impact of one shot resonated beyond the immediate target. It had shifted the operational tempo and forced the enemy onto the defensive. The corporal, chest heaving, maintained his position. He reloaded, aware that any further German attempt could reignite the engagement. Around him, the crew functioned like clockwork, loading, sighting, and firing as required. The battlefield, previously a tense waiting ground, had transformed into a controlled defensive operation, dictated by preparation, timing, and courage. In that instant, it became clear, the balance of this skirmish depended not on numbers or brute force alone, but on the decisive interplay of human skill, leadership, and the reliability of British weaponry. The German breakthrough, anticipated and feared, had been arrested in its tracks by the convergence of all these elements in one critical moment. 0939 hours. The German forces, stunned by the precision of the British artillery, scrambled to regain order. Tank commanders issued hurried signals, but visibility along the narrow road was poor, obscured by smoke from destroyed vehicles. The lead Panzer IV lay immobilized, its turret still spinning from the impact. Secondary units, trapped behind, struggled to maneuver. British gunners adjusted their aim, targeting the gaps in the stalled column with unerring accuracy. The second salvo tore through another tank, igniting fuel and ammunition. Flames licked the surrounding vehicles. Crewmen scrambled to escape, but chaos ruled. Infantry trailing the armor hesitated, unsure whether to press forward or retreat into the line of fire. British riflemen and machine gunners, positioned along the flanks, exploited the disruption, engaging enemy soldiers and preventing reorganization. The once marching German advance devolved into disarray. British command observed from forward posts, noting that coordination between artillery and infantry had reached its peak. Reinforcements were ready, prepared to move into sectors now softened by precise bombardment. The interplay of human skill, leadership, and technology manifested in real time, a textbook example of defensive warfare executed under pressure. Every member of the gun crew understood their part, every action built upon the last to magnify the effect of the first decisive shot. By 09:45 hours, the German offensive had ground to a halt. The planned breakthrough was no longer viable. Commanders attempted to reorganize, but delays and confusion crippled their momentum. Radio communication faltered as soldiers diverted attention to damaged vehicles and casualties. The psychological impact was immediate. Confidence in the plan eroded, hesitation replaced initiative. The British, in contrast, gained clarity and cohesion, seizing the tactical advantage. The gunner continued to fire intermittently, each round carefully measured to maintain pressure. Observers directed shells into areas of congestion, ensuring that German armor remained immobilized. The British infantry, sensing opportunity, advanced cautiously, securing the flanks and reinforcing artillery positions. The synchronization of units amplified the initial disruption, creating a defensive zone in which the Germans could no longer maneuver effectively. By 09:50 hours, the scale of the impact was clear. Multiple panzers were destroyed or disabled, infantry had been repelled, and the enemy's advance had stalled entirely. Field reports noted the extraordinary effectiveness of the defensive artillery and highlighted the exceptional skill of the gunner whose first shot had triggered the chain reaction. Leadership had allowed initiative, human precision had maximized technology, tactics had been executed flawlessly. The result was a battlefield transformed from potential disaster into controlled containment. The Germans, shaken by the sudden reversal, began to withdraw in small groups, seeking cover and regrouping under sporadic protective fire. Their formation, once cohesive and threatening, now resembled fragmented units struggling to escape. The British observed and recorded positions for follow-up strikes, ensuring that the enemy could not recover quickly. Commanders calculated the next moves, but the decisive moment, the first well-aimed shot, had already set the tone. Amid the smoke and debris, the corporal remained vigilant. Shells had been fired, enemy vehicles destroyed, and chaos sown within the German ranks. Yet he knew the engagement was not over, vigilance and discipline were still essential. Every movement, every decision, reinforced the broader lesson. One well-timed action, executed with skill and courage, could shape the outcome of a battle and influence strategic momentum far beyond the immediate moment. By 1000 hours, the immediate threat was neutralized. British forces consolidated their positions, tending to wounded, resupplying shells, and preparing for any renewed assault. Reports filtered up to higher command, detailing the extraordinary disruption caused by a single gunner's split-second decision. The tactical and psychological impact resonated beyond Dunkirk, demonstrating that even against the formidable blitzkrieg, preparation, human skill, and decisive action could halt the advance of superior forces. In that morning of January 14, 1941, one British gunner's shot had done more than destroy enemy armor. It had reshaped the battlefield, set the tone for defensive operations, and underscored the effectiveness of trained, disciplined forces against a mechanized enemy. The events that followed were a direct continuation of that decisive moment, leading into the aftermath that would define both British resilience and the limits of German overconfidence. The immediate consequences of the engagement were unmistakable. The German advance along the Dunkirk coastal road had been halted, the lead panzer platoon destroyed or immobilized, and infantry caught in disarray. British artillery had achieved what superior numbers and mechanized speed could not: a decisive delay of enemy operations. Reports from observation posts confirmed the destruction of multiple armored vehicles, while survivors recounted the sudden and unexpected precision of the artillery fire. British commanders recognized the strategic significance of the action. While small in scale compared to the broader war effort, the prevention of a breakthrough preserved the integrity of defensive positions along Dunkirk. Troops who had faced the threat firsthand described a shift in morale, a renewed confidence in both leadership and equipment. Letters and war diaries from gunners noted the psychological relief of seeing an immediate, tangible effect of their training. Infantry units, positioned near the artillery, took advantage of the disruption. They secured flanks and reinforced lines, establishing temporary control of the coastal road. The stalled German forces were forced to regroup, with commanders attempting to reorganize armored columns under increasingly chaotic conditions. This pause allowed British reinforcements to move into optimal defensive positions, strengthening the perimeter and preparing for any further enemy action. Casualties were incurred on both sides, though British losses were relatively contained. One gunner sustained minor shrapnel wounds, and a few infantrymen were treated for frostbite and exposure. German reports, later intercepted, detailed the frustration and confusion caused by the artillery strikes. Unit cohesion had collapsed in sections, forcing a temporary retreat to re-evaluate tactics. Field reports emphasized the effectiveness of integrating artillery, observation, and infantry coordination. The engagement became a case study in defensive warfare, demonstrating how disciplined execution of prepared plans could overcome superior firepower. Training, leadership, and situational awareness had converged to produce an outcome that significantly influenced the tactical environment, delaying German momentum at a critical juncture. The gunner whose split-second shot had initiated the disruption was lauded for precision and composure under pressure. While the action itself was part of routine duty, its impact resonated across command structures, informing future deployment of artillery units. Commanders used the encounter to reinforce the importance of readiness, meticulous observation, and decisive action. Reports circulated highlighting the role of technology alongside human skill. The 25-pounder field gun had proven its versatility and reliability. Soldiers and commanders alike noted that, while training and courage were vital, the equipment itself was an enabler, a force multiplier that allowed a single shot to influence the larger battle. By late afternoon, the immediate threat had been contained. German forces had temporarily halted their push, regrouped at secondary positions, and reported the heavy losses suffered in the failed advance. British units consolidated positions, resupplied ammunition, and tended to wounded personnel. The engagement had secured critical ground and preserved the operational integrity of the Dunkirk defensive perimeter, setting conditions for continued resistance in the days that followed. The events of this morning, though brief, would be referenced repeatedly in after-action reports and field manuals. The combination of decisive human action, leadership foresight, and tactical planning created a template for similar defensive operations across the European theater. The aftermath was not merely measured in destroyed tanks or delayed advances but in the affirmation of doctrine, the reinforcement of morale, and the tangible demonstration that Britain's forces, disciplined and well-led, could withstand and repel determined mechanized attacks. The broader consequences of the engagement extended beyond the immediate battlefield. By halting the German advance, British forces preserved critical positions along the Dunkirk perimeter, ensuring that supply lines and evacuation routes remained viable. Commanders recognized that delaying the enemy even for a few hours had strategic significance, buying time for reinforcements and enabling a more coordinated defensive posture across northern France. Reports from field officers emphasized the psychological impact. Soldiers, initially tense and fearful, gained renewed confidence in their artillery and command structure. Witnessing the destruction wrought by the precise firing of the 25-pounder reinforced trust in both leadership and equipment. Morale across nearby units rose, fostering cohesion and determination in the face of continued German pressure. German forces, on the other hand, faced operational setbacks. Unit cohesion had been disrupted, with panzer columns immobilized and infantry hesitant to advance. Orders from higher command urged caution, noting the effectiveness of British artillery and the need to reassess approaches. The encounter highlighted the vulnerabilities of blitzkrieg tactics when encountering well-prepared defenses with precise firepower. Subsequent operations were adjusted, with German commanders applying more reconnaissance and spacing to avoid similar ambushes. British artillery units used the engagement to refine tactics. Observers noted the value of layered firing positions, precise timing, and the coordination between infantry and gunners. Lessons learned were shared in reports and field manuals, emphasizing preparation, rapid decision-making, and maintaining composure under pressure. This knowledge informed future defensive strategies across the Western Front. The impact on leadership perceptions was equally significant. Officers noted that granting autonomy to trained gunners allowed critical decisions to be made in real time. The success of the single decisive shot reinforced the doctrine that individual skill, combined with strategic planning, could yield disproportionate results. Leadership credibility was strengthened, demonstrating that trust in personnel and preparedness could overcome numerical or mechanized advantages. Logistical benefits also followed. The temporary halt of the German advance provided crucial breathing space for resupply, repair of damaged artillery, and repositioning of units. Ammunition stocks were replenished, wounded were attended to, and observation posts adjusted for continued surveillance. Every action contributed to the consolidation of defensive capability, preparing British forces for subsequent engagements. The human dimension remained central. Soldiers recounted the engagement in letters and diaries, highlighting the courage, precision, and discipline required. The story of one gunner's split-second decision became emblematic of British resilience, exemplifying how trained individuals could influence outcomes far beyond their immediate surroundings. This incident became part of institutional memory, referenced as both a tactical lesson and a testament to human resolve under fire. By the close of the day, Dunkirk remained secure, and British forces retained operational flexibility. The engagement had demonstrated the interplay of training, equipment, leadership, and morale in defensive operations. It affirmed the strategic value of artillery and the capacity for well-led, disciplined forces to counter superior mechanized attacks, leaving an enduring legacy for subsequent battles across Europe. The events of January 14, 1941, at Dunkirk illustrate the profound impact a single, decisive action can have in warfare. One British gunner, operating under intense pressure, transformed a potentially catastrophic situation into a moment of strategic advantage. His split-second decision, executed with skill and composure, demonstrates how individual courage, training, and discipline intersect to shape the broader course of a battle. Artillery, often seen as a tool of mass destruction, became in this instance a precise instrument of control. The 25-pounder field gun, paired with meticulous observation and rapid coordination, exemplified British ingenuity. Technology alone did not win the day, it required human expertise and leadership to realize its full potential. The gunner's actions underscore the synergy between man and machine, where preparation meets opportunity in the theater of war. Leadership, at every level, proved equally critical. Commanders' willingness to empower trained individuals to make split-second decisions allowed initiative to flourish. At the same time, strategic foresight and meticulous planning created conditions in which one precise shot could halt an enemy advance, disrupting not only tanks and infantry but also the momentum and morale of the attacking force. The psychological dimension cannot be understated. British soldiers drew confidence and resilience from witnessing the effectiveness of their artillery and the decisive role of one comrade. Conversely, the German forces experienced hesitation and disruption, revealing that even highly disciplined mechanized units could be undone by careful preparation, timing, and human skill. In the broader context of the war, this engagement demonstrates how tactical precision and courage can influence operational outcomes. It reinforces Britain's prominence as a nation capable of resisting formidable enemy forces through discipline, ingenuity, and determination. The lessons of Dunkirk, the integration of human skill, technology, leadership, and morale, continue to resonate, highlighting the enduring importance of preparation and decisiveness in warfare. Ultimately, the story of a single gunner's split-second shot reminds us that history is shaped not only by grand strategy or overwhelming force but by the measured actions of individuals committed to duty. In that moment, Britain's resilience and ingenuity prevailed, leaving an indelible mark on the battlefield and on the record of the Second World War.